Welcome everyone. Good evening. It's a pleasure that I get to do what I get to do every day, create content, educate, and transform people's lives around their personal and or business finances. So, welcome to the 12 people who are active right now in the house, and that number will be rising as more and more people tune on in. In this discussion this evening, we're going to be looking at the velocity banking concept and the infinite banking strategy or infinite banking concept, bringing those two strategies together, developing a framework that makes sense. And so this is going to help those who are looking at one or both of these strategies and you're wondering if this will make sense for you, right? Then there's the group of people that are here live, active, already clients, or you are someone already practicing one or both of the strategies, and maybe you need a little more fine tuning. Maybe you're doing something incorrectly, and we can address that here in terms of how we can fix it. And again, really looking at our framework to make sure, am I looking at this strategy correctly? Am I maximizing the benefits of this strategy? Or am I abusing the strategy, thinking that it was supposed to do one thing, then we changed it along the way, made some moves, had some setbacks, made some mistakes. How do we course correct, right? So with that being said, we're going to dive right into it. If you're here live, drop some comments, drop your questions, let me know you're here, ready to get started. There will be a Q&A session once I wrap up our evening, right? So here we go. Let's get started. Let's get right to work, okay? So velocity banking, infinite banking concept in 2024. What's the framework? What's the strategy? Let me also say that me personally, with these two strategies, if you were to go back to the very beginning of this YouTube channel, you're going to hear things that I was saying there that I either still say to this day, or there have been some tweaks and some adjustments that have been made. For example, with the infinite banking concept, when I first started my policies, my strategy was saving money into cash value life insurance. This is a place where I simply park my savings instead of having my savings in a savings account, checking account, money market, CD, right? Or a bond, right? As an alternative. Boom. That is still the same thing I say today. Then, on top of savings dollars, I was putting dollars that were going to be used for expenses to run and operate the business, or personal expenses that could be ran through a credit card to get cashback rewards and reduce the actual bill itself by paying it up in full via annually, right? And so I was running about maybe 20, upwards of almost $30,000 of bills through the policy, which just simply means I send the money to my policy first, then I borrowed, took a policy loan, have an interest rate, and that money was deployed to expenses. Specific expenses that, again, I could run through a credit card at 0%, get cashback rewards, and it was a bill that I could switch from monthly to annual to actually reduce the bill itself by 10, upwards of 20+%, okay? Now, if you go back to my case studies when I was talking about that, I was saying how this is a good strategy, but only temporarily. This is not something I'm gonna do for the duration of my life or for the funding period of my life insurance policy. This is for a temporary period of time to basically get a larger amount of funding into the policy, do my best to create some positive arbitrage early on in the beginning. And then after a certain period of time, I was estimating like 5 years, 6 years, that I would stop, then start to pay back the loans to reduce that interest cost from compounding, right? Reduce it, start to pay back the loans, then eventually redeploy the funds into real estate, okay? So you'll hear me say those things, and then now the message or the strategy has tweaked and has improved. So we are now in 2024. I started my policies back in 2018 and 2019. I saved money in the policy. I used the policy to run bills and make some investments from time to time. I've invested in crypto. I invested in HSA. I've invested in the brokerage account. I invested in a Roth account. And I also just invested in my business. So I've done a lot with the policy over the last 5, now going on 6 years. Moving forward, and the last year or so, I've been paying down the loans in my policy, creating more equity and space to be able to acquire real estate. Now, my first move in real estate was buying a home, right? So on December 21st, I officially closed on my home. And so you'll see some case studies come out where I'm talking about how I'm using a first position home equity line of credit and cash value life insurance policies to not only accelerate the pay down of the property, but also leverage the equity in that property as a checking account to run and operate my expenses, hence velocity banking or velocity of money, and then taking that same equity and throwing it into policies to max fund these life insurance policies, then borrowing the money out to either throw it right back into the line or make more additional investments. So you're gonna start hearing that message, that strategy, and then a couple years from now, you'll probably hear me tweak it again. So your financial strategy may change in life. Reason why I'm telling you this story is your financial strategy may change in life, but the framework should stay the same, in my opinion. You should have a financial foundation framework, a way of seeing things, a way of processing new information, a way of processing new strategies, whether it's tax strategy, investment strategy, saving strategy, spending strategy, whatever it is. You should have a framework to process those things to determine if this is right for me or not. Let me also share with you that there's tons of people that watch this channel that do not practice velocity banking or infinite banking because either they don't like it, it's too confusing at the moment, or they're simply not ready for it. So what do? We have so many other strategies that we can implement, even though the primary topics on this channel are velocity banking and infinite banking. But there's so much pregame work that gets discussed off the camera and on a one-on-one phone call with you, with clients, right? And that involves the framework, building a financial framework. So I want to spend some time doing that this evening. And it always starts with knowing your 4 major numbers, right? I'm going to share with you my framework, how I'm operating. I figured let me paint a picture, right? Let me just put it all out. And if you agree with 100% of it, wonderful. If you agree with 80%, cool, right? If you disagree with something, throw it in the comments and we can have a dialogue and go from there. So number one is I have to know my numbers. That's step one of having a financial framework. How am I operating? What's coming in? What's coming out? Something that I heard Chris Kirkpatrick say before in the past in his videos, and he preaches a lot about, and he says he got it from Grant Cardone, and so I'm pretty sure I either got it from Chris or Grant Cardone, so I'm giving them both credit. He says you should have what's called a personal P&L statement, and I just was like, oh, this is genius, right? So I've been doing it personally for myself for a little while now, but in business terms, you always have to have a P&L statement, right? In order to determine how much taxes you're going to pay, in order to determine how much income you made for the entire year. But imagine for those of you, and majority of you watching now live, the replay, and most of the subscribers are not business owners. Most of you watching are not business owners. You're W-2 employees. So when you hear P&L, it sounds foreign to you. You're like, What? I don't need a P&L. I don't have a business, Denzel. No, you actually do have a business. It's called your household economy. That's your business. And it involves you, spouse, kids, right? Medium family members. And in that household, you have income that comes into the household, and you have expenses that leave the household, and then you are left with a cash flow. So those of you who struggle with budgeting, like me, I don't budget. I just simply know my numbers. I know how to live a certain particular lifestyle according to my numbers. And I simply get super intentional about how I spend my money, right? And so by developing a personal P&L statement, we did this on my last live stream. You basically log into your checking account, or if you have multiple checking accounts where your paychecks go into, you log into every single one of them. You filter, you go to filter, you put custom date, and you would put January 1st to January 31st. And you're going to select debits, right? Or we select credits first. How much came into the economy for the month of January, right? So every single month, it literally takes you less than 15 minutes to log into your bank account, do what I'm saying to do, click the filter button, click custom date. That's 2 clicks so far. You see the drop down, you click credits, right? So 1 click, let's count this through. 1 click to get to the bank, log in, click, okay, 2, click on checking, 3, go to filter, click, 4, custom date, click, boom, credit. You now see how much income came in. 5 clicks. How long did that take you? 35 seconds? Maybe even less than that, even for my older folks. Less than that, right? Super easy. You've done it a million times, because how many times do you log into your bank account, right? We're always looking at our money. So 5 clicks to get to credits. How much money came into your economy for the month of January? Boom, write that number down. Switch over, click, 6 clicks, debits. How much money came out? Minus credits from debits, you have cash flow. You either have a negative cash flow that month or a positive cash flow that month. If you're negative, you get to be intentional. You get to look through the whole entire thing and say, oh, next month we're not doing that. Next month we're not doing that. Next month we're not doing that. We get to just simply be intentional. Instead of trying to build a budget that's restrictive, it's based off restriction. And many of us, it's extremely difficult to stick to a budget. Extremely difficult. Most people fail at it. And then when you fail at it, you beat yourself up and you just continue to spiral and you don't make improvements. Versus if we think intentionally and ask questions like, does this bring joy, peace, happiness, love for this particular expense? No, it does not. Okay, I get to make a conscious decision now whether I get to keep that illusion of pleasure for that particular expense or not, right? You get to wrestle with that, make your decision, move forward, okay? So developing a P&L statement will help you get a better grip on the 4 major numbers. So as much as I always talk about this is extremely important. You got to know this. What are your 4 major numbers? Income, expenses, debt, cash flow. What's coming in, what's going out? What's your obligations, and what's the leftover cash flow? Net. All right. From there, I decide to create value in the marketplace to get paid abundantly. Creation is the highest form of wealth creation on planet Earth. There is no higher level of creating wealth other than creating, thinking of ways of solving problems for people that you have solutions to. Articulating that message effectively, speaking it, education, teaching, coaching, the whole 9. So I create value. That value gets stored in the form of money. And in many of you, you could view money as energy. That energy gets stored into a specific type of bank account called a business checking. Okay? I take that business checking account And because it's a S Corp, the business that I own pays me. I'm an employee of my business now, right? Pay myself a salary to do the job in the business that I am creating. And for doing that, my government gives me incentives, tax breaks, tax incentives to be an entrepreneur, to be a business owner. Okay? So money flows from business to personal, little by little. The cash flow and the expenses that it takes to run my business. That personal checking account is tied to our debt tool, where the velocity of money or velocity banking comes into play. That tool can be a first position home equity line of credit. It could be a second position home equity line of credit. It could be a personal line of credit. It could be a credit card, or it could be a combination, a multitude of these things. In my case, in 2024, it is now a first position home equity line of credit. This first position home equity line of credit has the debt of the property that I just acquired. So the financed amount is right about there. The credit limit is that when it out the gate, I owe 567, and the credit limit is 567. The actual number is like 566,000 and some change, so I'm just kind of rounding it up, just, easy. 567 is the credit limit, and that's how much I owe. Then I have income and cash flow that will get moved to this, what's called a smart checking account, and it'll automatically move the funds into the first lien to bring this balance down, right? Which creates equity. Instant equity, available, liquid, to do whatever I so please with those funds. Now, that first lien HELOC is going to pay bills, right? After all bills are paid, cash flow stays in the line throughout the year until it is ready to be deployed into the next part, which is the IBC component, or whole life insurance. Okay? Before I pay the bills get paid by a credit card or a multitude of credit cards, where I earn cashback rewards, statement credits, and points at 0% interest costs, which means my income gets to stay in the line of credit for a longer period of time, which means less interest is being paid on this particular debt. Now, if you are someone that does not have any debt whatsoever, you're completely debt-free, then velocity banking becomes obsolete when we're talking about paying off debt. Where velocity banking would come into play is how we can now leverage debt to potentially create positive arbitrage by investing, right? Where we take a lump sum of capital that let's say you didn't have in cash flow or in cash savings, and you leverage capital plus, say, your existing cash flow to invest in an asset that can produce more cash flow, tax incentives greater than your cost of borrowing in the first place. That is velocity banking, the velocity of money. You are leveraging debt to now make more money. Right here is showing leveraging debt to pay down the debt. So what's interesting is the tool that I got to buy a property is it came with debt, right? The purchase price of the home was $630,000. And I put 10.1% down, okay? Plus closing costs, plus repairs, okay? And all the other added expenses that come with that. So this was pure cash capital that I built over the last 5 years from my policy that went toward real estate, purchase of real estate. I now have a line of credit for $567,000, like that. So I just created money, you could say out of thin air. That's one way of looking at it. Or you create a debt out of thin air. I look at debt as money in my eyes because I know what I can do with it, because I have a framework and I have a strategy that works for me. And my goal is to help you develop your framework. It doesn't have to be mine, right? Remember that. You can take what works for you, or you can take all of it. Either or. I want you to be a free thinking being, make your own decisions with intention, and then lead with that in action. It may require experimentation to see what works and what doesn't work. And then you refine, you refine, you refine, you refine, iron sharpens iron, and we get phenomenal results. Agreed? Comment below if you agree. We have 40 people in the house. Wonderful. 40 people in the house. Exciting. If you're getting value from the video, drop a like button. If you're getting value from the video, drop a like button. If you haven't gotten the full value yet, don't like it yet. Okay? We're going to continue. So, got this first lien HELOC product. That's my tool that I'm using to accelerate this debt that creates instant equity that is instantly liquid, which will get deployed at a later point in time. So what's going to happen is, as I'm running a majority of my income in, expenses are coming out, cash flow stays, brings the balance down, reduces my interest costs. I offset some of the interest costs with the credit cards and the cashback rewards. I then take lump sums of money that I'm saving, and I'm now depositing savings dollars plus investment dollars plus emergency funds plus idle money. So if I have any money that's sitting idle, not doing anything, doesn't have a purpose, I'm going to purpose it by just storing it in the whole life insurance. Any emergency funds I have get stored in the whole life insurance. Savings dollars get stored in the life insurance. Investment dollars are dollars that I know I'm going to allocate for investing, but just not at this very moment. And so I'm going to position those dollars in there as well. That's my framework for whole life insurance. I've got some rules here where I do my very best to save at least 40% of my income. And where I save the money is in whole life insurance across a multitude of different policies. I have 4 total in my household. Okay? So I do my very best to save about 40% of my annual gross income per year, and I try to push a majority of that into life insurance. The rest is allocated towards operations, right? So within that savings, portion of that will be given, where I just give. The other 60% that I'm living off of, there's some giving in there as well. And majority of it is operations. That also includes taxes, right? Then I use velocity banking to reduce or offset costs, right? And increase leverage through capital. I always invest for cash flow. And long term, I'm solving for lifetime income. My goal is to have as much tax-free income as possible in my financial strategy. That's just me. Others don't think that way. They keep their money in tax-deferred accounts. That's totally fine, right? That's your choice. For me, I prefer lifetime income, as much of it as possible to be tax-free. And then my goal is to serve at the highest level possible so that I can not only transform other people's lives, but it's going to transform mine in return. And so I have bought into the concept of giving and receiving. That is something that has favored me very well over the years, and I'm fully convicted that it'll continue to do that, right? So framework for velocity banking is the type of tool that I'm using, knowing my numbers, understanding the flow of money I don't keep my money parked idle in checking accounts. I have it flowing through debt, and I see debt as money. I see debt as leverage. I see debt as control, right? It's a paradigm shift is how I see things, and then I move forward, right? So now the next part here is I pull from debt that the bank gave me on my house, and I'm going to fund my life insurance policies with the same savings dollars, emergency funds, idle money, investment dollars that came from the business production. I produce, I save, it moves to personal, temporarily gets parked in the home equity line of credit to bring down the interest costs, creates more equity instantaneously, and then on the anniversary dates throughout the year of these policies, they get funded annually. So my framework for whole life insurance, I gave you the framework for velocity banking right here. Framework for whole life insurance is this is a safe, liquid, tax-free, guaranteed store of wealth, location where I can store wealth. That's my framework. These are facts. These are truths that exist within that product. Then my framework is before I get it started, before I get it going, my goal is to have 6 months worth of expenses, saving at least $10,000 per year or more. I have the ability to fund that on an annual basis, and I have a long-term mindset, okay? Full transparency, I did not have all of these things in place when I started, and now moving forward, this is the standard that I'm setting for myself, and this is a standard or a preference that I set for clients and those that I work with on a one-to-one basis. So I try to set that expectation in advance so that we are not blindsided later on, so that we are not taking steps back if an unexpected emergency occurs. This doesn't become a burden because we came to the table with 6 months worth of expenses, a consistent track record of saving at least $10,000 or more per year, and the capital to at least fund a policy of more than $10,000 per year conservatively, just with savings dollars. Can you do that? If you are not in a position where you can do that, my recommendation is maybe we take 2 steps back and see, can we increase the top line, which is your income, and can we reduce the bottom line, your expenses? Can we reduce that to create a nice gap between what we make and what we spend to create this positive cash flow, to then take that positive cash flow, give it purpose, be intent, get yourself to a better financial position overall. Do you like that framework so far? Let me get some comments, right? If you agree with that framework. Framework, flow, right? So here's what happens continuing on in my particular financial framework and strategy. Once the money has left the home equity line of credit to fund the policy, money is now growing in the policy tax-free for as long as I live. Guaranteed forever. The money goes nowhere but up. It can never lose money, goes nowhere but up, right? And it comes with a death benefit, it comes with many other benefits along the way. Now, the money is not just going to sit there and do nothing, right? The money's at work for sure in the policy, but it's not as efficient. So I need to increase the efficiency in that by taking out policy loans. Now, when I take out a policy loan, it comes back to the personal checking account because the policy is in my personal name, right? I personally own this whole life insurance contract, not my business. My business helps fund my personally owned life insurance policy. So when I borrow and I take a loan out, it hits the personal checking account, right? And then that money will either get put back into the business or it'll stay in the personal checking, one or the other, okay? If it stays in the personal checking, it is likely financing expenses, certain ones, right? But that has come to a stop pretty much, so I'm no longer really doing that. And so a majority of that is now, boom, it's going back into the business where the business can invest in the business or tax strategy. And then these two products right here, HSA Roth IRA, brokerage account, right? Now, the HSA can get paid from the personal checking or the business because the HSA is in my name, and the business is getting a deduction, right? I'm getting a deduction, I think, off the personal income. I forget how it works. But essentially, when I fund my health savings account, which this year, the number is now $4,150, right? So think about how many times this $4,150 got used, right? So where did the $4,150 initially come from? It came from creating value. It landed in the business checking account. It got moved to the personal. It went into the first lien. Boom, one use. $4,150 is sitting in there. It's bringing down the cost of the debt that I just acquired on that home. And it created instantly $4,150 in equity. Boom, sits in there. Then that money got moved over here into whole life insurance, where it buys an asset. This $4,150 is buying an asset, whole life insurance, death benefit, tax-free growth, guaranteed, and a non-guaranteed dividend on top of that. Then the money gets borrowed out, $4,150, in the form of a policy loan. And then it funds another asset, the health savings account, where now the $4,150 is now in a health savings account, and I get a deduction off my income for $4,150. And now the money that's growing in the HSA is now growing tax deferred, right? And now that $4,150 purchases gold and silver, another asset within an asset that produces more value. More value. Gold and silver is a hedge against inflation, right? It's a store of wealth, and it's being stored in an asset that's tax deferred. And then on top of that, the HSA, when I'm 59 and a half, I can take tax-free income out of the HSA to reimburse myself for all the years of my medical expenses. And I was looking through the whole list of medical expenses that are tax deductible, and there's quite a few of them. So what I'm doing is, out of the pay bills column, I'm tracking all the expenses, logging it, right? Logging all of it over the next 30, 40 years or whatever, until I reach 59 and a half, whatever 59 minus 28 is, or really like 25, 4, because I've now had the HSA for almost 4 or 5 years or something like that. And the value right now is like, I think it's like 13,000 plus the 4,150. I just dumped the money in there for 2024. So that money's going to get, purchase more gold and silver. It's going to increase the value of that, right? Pretty cool stuff. Same with the Roth IRA. It's after tax dollars. All right. So before I go to that one, understand that this 4,150 was working in here. It's working in here. It's working in here. And then in here, it's working with the gold and silver, which is increasing the value of the same money. Is that pretty cool? Do you like that? Comment below. If you don't like that, if you like a different strategy, let me know. Right? I'm always looking to improve this model, right? Because the strategy can always change, but the framework stays the same. Okay? So moving right along, I got the Roth IRA. Now, I'm at a point where I make too much money to have the Roth IRA, but my fiance can have a Roth IRA, and I think the max is $6,100. So I can help her max fund that through this system, because with this first lien HELOC, not only can I be sending my income into this first lien HELOC product, but also my fiance's income can flow into that first lien HELOC, and any other member of my household income can flow in there and stay parked. And everybody can pay their bills out of here, which increases efficiency even more, right? So $6,100 Roth, boom, brokerage account, that money's growing. And then the tax strategy exists with me working with a team of accountants, bookkeepers, tax strategists, tax coaches to help me reduce the tax liability on the value that I create in the economy, which means more money stays in my economy, which means I can flow more of it through the strategy, through the system. Okay, is this clear? Did I lose anybody? Or do you like the way the picture is laid out? And you can do this for yourself. You can write, if you're a business owner, you write business checking, money comes in, where does it then go? If it's an S Corp LLC, it's going to flow to your personal after you've paid expenses for your operational expense. The cash flow and the income that you pay yourself, it flows somewhere. It hits another type of checking account, your personal, right? If you're doing velocity banking, you now have a debt tool. You're using that debt tool to either pay off debt, accelerate, or invest to create more income. I've been doing both, right? For the past couple of years, when it comes to velocity banking, I've been leveraging velocity banking to increase income. Now, because I took on debt, $567,000, my goal is to reduce that as quickly as possible, because I create more equity instantly that I can then use to what? Boom, max fund these policies. So I get the best of both worlds, right? Both tools. So step 1, 2, right? 3, whole life, borrow, boom, back to checking, and invest it. And that's where you get your positive arbitrage, right? Not necessarily with the interest that you pay in the loans and the interest that you're earning in the policy. That only occurs much later in the policy, right? And it also depends on how much you're borrowing, okay? So when it comes to borrowing, another framework, when I borrow out of my policy, I only do a max of 2/3, 66% or 67%. It's usually never more than 2/3 of the available cash value. I'm never borrowing more than the available cash value. I never take out or leverage all of it. So I keep a very, very healthy amount of money in there, and it's always a minimum of 6 months of expenses. At this point, it's up to a year that I keep in there, and then I leverage the rest to make these different moves. HSA, Roth, brokerage account, invest back into the business, where I build a team, I invest in marketing, I invest in video editing services to improve my videos, I invest in coaching programs, sales programs, personal development programs, I buy books, I invest in knowledge, and keep going and going and going, right? And we're done. That's the framework in under 40 minutes. Not bad, not bad. So what I'm going to do now is look at your questions. If you have questions, I will address them right here, right now. If you have anything that you're struggling with financially, if you are brand new and you're like, dude, this is way over my head, man. Okay, this was an advanced session. I forgot to share that in the beginning, that this is advanced. Discussing these two concepts coming together, how they complement each other. I think they complement each other very well. And I think there's a lot of different ways that these methods can collide and complement each other. It doesn't always have to do with paying down debt. Like in my strategy, let's imagine that the first lien HELOC, I now only owe like $100,000 or like $200,000 on it, and I've got like $400,000 of space available in there. The strategy might just go from servicing the debt, just servicing it, and then taking a majority of the capital, 200-300 grand, and throwing it at commercial real estate or throwing it at another business, or buying cash flowing businesses that are struggling, right? And maybe turn them around, try and make them profitable. And then the cash flow again then gets feedback where it just simply parks right back in the first lien and keeps it going. So let me address your questions. Hello to Andre. Andre's in the house. Welcome, my friend. And I am looking forward to doing a whiteboard session on your numbers. I had the pleasure of hanging out with Andre in person in Fort Lauderdale area. We had a phenomenal time together, and he's in a position where he has a first lien HELOC. He's got a whole life insurance policy. You know, he's got a business. He's doing Airbnb. He's got his full-time career, and he's, you know, combining these different things together to just expand the kingdom, right? All day and walk in his authority. Juggernaut says, we are in our 50s. We just started velocity banking. Are we too old to start infinite banking? And should we do that when we're paying off debt? So 50s, no, you're not too old. If you were in your late 60s or 70s, then I might say maybe. And then it would purely depend on what your needs are, right? So I would say that typically, from my experience, the older the individual is that I'm working with, typically the more concerned they are about having enough income to live off of, okay? Now, whole life insurance could potentially be an income strategy, but not the policy itself alone. You're going to need another tool to get to that lifetime income, number one. Number two, you're going to need more time to really develop the product, right? So if we're in our 50s, and again, depending on who you are, if you're someone that's in your 50s, but you feel like you're 30, and you're like, Denzel, I plan on working the next 25 years from 50 to 75 or 55 to 76, 70, whatever the case. So if we have a nice timeline of committed production of activity income, then I would say, sure, we could look at life insurance. That might be something that we could look at. If that's not the case, if you're 50 and you feel like you're 60, because we didn't take care of our health, whatever the case may be, all these different situations, maybe some kind of death benefit, but maybe not in the form of whole life, maybe term. And then we take the strategy of velocity banking that you're using to accelerate your debt. Okay, we can do that to reduce obligations. And then once we've eliminated a certain amount of debt, maybe we shift our focus to, say, in investing for income, maybe through annuities, maybe through a business, right? Maybe through real estate, to get to that point where you have enough passive income coming in to cover your expenses. And then once you get to that point, maybe you might get rekindled and say, you know what, yeah, I'm in my late 60s, 70s now. I want to start a business. It's never too late. So change your mindset about what old is, and just change your mindset about that. Tim Harlow, good evening, my friend. Never too late to start infinite banking. I would agree, Tim, unless the person just simply doesn't qualify, right? Because at the end of the day, we do have to qualify. We have to meet health standards in order to even qualify for this product. And if you yourself don't qualify, but wife does, or vice versa, or if neither husband or wife qualifies, maybe we could look at kids. If kids qualify, then that might make sense, right? We could look at that. Brian says, congrats on the home. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Concepts are incompatible. You will lose money every time. TJ Turk, thank you for your opinion, right? I appreciate that. So TJ believes that this framework that I'm building does not work and that I'll lose money every time, right? Well, I can see that happening for sure. if I do not have a good framework of knowing my numbers, if I over leverage the first lien HELOC product or over leverage the whole life product, I could absolutely see this completely imploding on itself. I can see that happening, TJ, right? But because I have a good framework, because I'm a good steward of my money, because I understand how these concepts work, how these strategies work, it's just simply not the case. And because I know how to leverage debt to multiply income over a long period of time, it's just not the case, right? But again, for you, TJ Turk, this would not be the recommendation. And mind you, I have clients just like you, TJ Kirk, that don't believe or they're not ready for these strategies, and we simply just don't do them. We do debt snowball, we get our debt paid down, we build credit. Maybe we use a little bit of credit cards, a little bit of leverage, right? Get them exposed to just a little bit. And we focus on how we can create value from scratch, no leveraging debt whatsoever, and just create value from scratch, work really hard and smart to produce income and get results, right? Hi, Denzel, this is Crawford. I appreciate the information. I definitely get more information on the ministry. Thanks. Absolutely. Is a HELOC still a good idea with a VA home loan? Maybe not, right? Maybe your VA home loan is at such a low interest rate that getting a first lien HELOC to replace the whole entire thing, maybe that doesn't make total sense to do that. Maybe a second position home equity line of credit could be something if there's equity in the home. Maybe that's a move, but maybe the move is not to pay off the home, right? If you have a super low interest rate on that loan, you have fixed your cost of living of that home below what inflation is right now. And it's a lie when they tell you inflation's at 3% right now. That's a total lie. There's no way, right? If we just were in inflation period where it was like 10+%, right? They said the number was around 6 to 8, right? Or higher, but in reality it's like 15+% when you factor in many other things. And we're still in that environment, so don't believe that lie. So if you've got a 2.5-2% mortgage and you've fixed the cost of your living, you might come to the conclusion that paying this off doesn't make sense. It's not a burden to you financially. It doesn't have stress on you financially, doesn't increase your stress, and you and spouse are on the same page. Then maybe taking the excess cash flow that you do have and investing it, creating value in the marketplace, and just simply increasing the income to the point where you could literally write a check to pay off the home at any point in time. It's nice to have that ability to, and liquidity, right? And nice to have options. So that's what I would say there. JCR says, just getting my HELOC in place. Can't wait to apply Velocity Banking to my finances. Awesome. Excited for you. Sorry I'm a little late, Denzel, but I made it. Welcome, Jerry, and congratulations on your approval for solar panels. I got an email letting me know that you are officially approved and now can get to the stage of installation. That's what it said in the email. So I don't know if you saw that, but I think that came in today or maybe yesterday. So I'm excited for you because it's literally been months working with the HOA of your community to pull that through. And Maureen was talking to me today about the laws that had to get changed and the rules just to pull this off, right? So that's really, really cool. Happy for you there. Tim says, my daughter is a junior in college. How do I help her start her own policy? So, Tim, since you're the dad, you don't really need her permission to start a life insurance policy on her, right? So you could be the policy owner. She is the insured, but you have full ownership of the policy. So you can fund it with your own dollars in the beginning to get it going, right? And then along the way, you can teach her about how this works and how it's going to benefit her long term, right? So if she's a junior in college, she's probably like, I don't know, 20-ish, something like that. If she started at 18, maybe like 20, 21. So yeah, since you're the dad, you can just put a policy on your daughter, and in some cases, she may not even have to go through any medical underwriting, depending on how big the death benefit is. And again, you're the owner, she's the insured, she doesn't have access to the policy. You fund it with your dollars, you teach her about it. Over time, she learns, and then she's like, Dad, I want to, participate, start saving some money in this, right? So she starts putting some of her own money into it and say your money. And then you get to a point where maybe you put less and now she starts to put more, and she becomes, more, what's the word, mature over that tool, knows how to use it. And then one day down the road, you can transfer ownership to her, and then she would have full access of that policy. So that's something that you can do. So Bell says, when do you pay back the whole life insurance loan? That really does depend on your strategy, right? It really depends on the strategy and what you are trying to do. So let me give you some numbers on that, Mr. Guy. So I'll delete this. This was good framework. You can always rewind the video and come back to this. But now I'm gonna show some numbers behind this, how I am doing all of this. Okay, so here we go. Let's have some fun. So I'll show biz checking again. Money goes in, hits the personal checking, hits the first lien HELOC, funds the whole life. Okay. And I have dedicated videos to this as well, but we'll go quick. In one policy, so we're going to look at just one policy that I own, that I've been saving for the last 5 years now, going on 6. So total of $358,000 in cash value. And if we follow my framework, my personal framework of leverage, 358,000 times 2/3 would be $236,000. Okay? So I'll just round it down and say 236 grand is what I borrowed, or what I will borrow. At the moment, I owe $113,000 in loans at the moment, right? When it's all said and done, I will owe this number. So we're going to pretend like right now I owe $236,000 at the moment. The interest rate on that is 5.66%, is the interest rate that I pay to the insurance company, right? The crediting rate from the insurance company, the crediting rate on this amount of money is 6%. Okay? So let's do the math. 236,000 times 5.66. The amount of interest that I would pay in a year would be $13,357.06. That's simple interest in 1 year for however long I owe the 236. I'll always pay just that, right? The crediting rate on 236,000 is 6%. So I'm going to earn this amount, $14,160. That $14,160 is going to get deposited into, well, I should say here, into the total cash value, right? So 358,000 minus 236, there's $122,000 that is earning the gross dividend rate of 5.85%. But that's gross. I'm in my 5th year. I want to say that the IRR is maybe like 2% right now. And that number will grow the longer I own the policy, but I want to say 2%. I don't think it's anything lower than that. So 5.85% gross on 122, 6% on 236. This is called a direct recognition loan, okay? Where the insurance company is recognizing that I just took out this loan from the cash value at $236,000, and the insurance company is paying me a higher rate on the borrowed funds, and I get charged a slightly lower rate at 5.66%. The difference is the 122 that didn't get touched, it's earning 5.85, but when you minus expenses in the policy and you just say 2%, right? So on 122,000, maybe that generates $2,440. So you add the 2 plus 14,160. So for that year I earned 16,600, but I paid out of pocket. So this is what I do, Mr. Bellevue guy, right? I pay this out of pocket, the $13,357.60, and I allow 100% of the dividend crediting rate of the 16.6 to get added to the 358. So the 358 plus 16.6 is now 374, right? And then the 236 was deposited in the first lien HELOC to create equity space, right? So 630 grand minus 236,000, my balance on the HELOC will be somewhere around this number owed, right? And my credit limit is the 567K. So how much is available? 567 minus 394. Whoops, 567 minus 394. 173,000 available. Right? That I can use for what? Whatever I want. Right? Run bills, run expenses, park cash flow, keep paying it down. Take the same money on the anniversary date on this particular policy. I'm funding $70,000 a year. Where does the $70,000 come from to fund it? Comes from here, correct. First lien HELOC. So the 70 gets deposited in the whole life on the anniversary date. 70,000 plus 394. Now I'm at 464,000. And I ask myself, how am I losing money? So when I talk to the TJ Kirks of the world, right? Because TJ earlier said that this doesn't work. Remember, he says concepts are incompatible. You will You will lose money every time. And so when I run the math here, I get confused because I'm like, wait a minute, am I reading this wrong? Am I somehow missing something, right? I've been saving money for the last 5-6 years. That money has now been growing in an account where the money is about to break even in terms of principal dollars paid in, right? About to break even. I'm getting a positive internal growth rate compared to what I borrow out. It just so happens, like in this environment, that this works. I pay that $13,357.60. So not only did I pay $70,000, right, in the policy, so I also took $13,356 from, the available line, right? And then we could say total that went into the policy that year was this number, $83,357.60, right? Pretty powerful stuff, okay? And so when do I pay this back? I can either pay it back after I've paid down the HELOC to a certain degree, right? Either after I pay it off. So maybe my strategy might be, okay, 3 years from now, I'll pay it back. If I get a cash windfall in between those 3 years, then that extra cash would go towards paying down the loan, right? So it really depends on the strategy and what you're solving for. For right now, what I'm solving for in my finances is getting that line of credit down as much as I can, because the interest rate on it is going to be pretty high, right, in this environment. So if I can just get that cost down, create a lot of space, and then the excess will flow back to the policy to make sure I'm always max funding first, paying the interest second, and then start to pay down the loans, right? So that's what I'm doing there. And for other moves, right, it could be instant. Like the minute you pull the money out, you're immediately starting to repay it, right? That might be a move too. Okay, so a lot of flexibility. You get to set the terms. What's his name? I forget. Bellevue guy. You get to set the terms, right? In terms of when you pay it back. You get to set those terms. All right, next question. Hello, Denzel. I started following you back in 2018 when you were picking up steam. We spoke on the phone before, lost contact after our first interaction. I've always wanted to get more info. So Carlos, you have the ability to reach out. So you're in Texas at that time. Lived in Corpus Christi, Texas. We lived in Austin. Okay, cool. I'm available. Reach out. Let's see how we can get back in and figure out how I can be of service to you. Go from there. How different would this scenario be if it was a second lien HELOC? Okay, J10. So in the framework, I addressed how whatever your tool is, it could be a first lien, it could be a second lien, it could be a PLOC, it could be a BLOC, it could be a credit card, right? Now, with the first lien HELOC, I would just say that you get more flexibility with it. It's a much bigger tool, so over time you can do more. With the second lien HELOC, you still need to have a personal checking account, so you're not able to get that automatic sweep function of money moving in and out. You would have to manually do it, but that's not a whole lot of work, right? not a whole lot of work. So it's not such a big difference, but slight changes, nothing crazy. Thanks for sharing, Denzel. It is interesting how you've combined infinite banking with velocity banking. My question is, when do you pay back, if any, the whole? Okay, so yeah, I answered your question earlier. Okay, cool. Denzel, it's Seth from Texas. I asked about the VA loan and using the HELOC. I asked about the VA loan and using the HELOC. And what did they say? Are you leaving me hanging here? Thanks for the info. The interest rate is low as you described. Okay. By the way, I've been velocity banking since 2018. Okay, cool. Installs on the 29th. Wonderful. Bobby Bo says, look at the pill method. Very familiar with the pill method, right? So also your previous comment was need to stop borrowing and pay off your mortgage early. Okay, so I actually don't have a mortgage, Bobby Bo. It's a first lien HELOC, right? Looks like a mortgage, but it's really not. It's a checking account, and it's a credit line that happens to be maxed out. And so all I'm doing is paying it down. And then I re-access the money and then I redeploy it at a later point in time because of how I'm offsetting. So if I was to just pay off my first lien HELOC to zero and never use it again, like I just don't see the value in not using over $500,000 of capital that I can clearly offset. I can write off the interest on the debt, right? Because it's property interest. I can write that off. I got a homestead exemption. I'm using the Augusta rule. Moving forward, home office deduction expense. You know, I get to write off certain things in the home. I get to do so many things that it literally doesn't cost me to service the debt, because in my opinion, debt is money, right? It's not my opinion, it's actually a fact. Like, debt is money. You live in a debt-based society, and so that's just what it is. This is gold. Thank you, brother Denzel. Thank you. But still, yes, very familiar with the pill method. Great guy. We worrying about the interest rate mortgages are made to bank double. Okay, great content, but we need to stop borrowing, pay off your mortgage in 7 to 10 years. So with my strategy, I'm going to be done in 3. Okay, so I know exactly what you're talking about, Bo. But I think we're saying the same thing, Bobby. I think we're saying the same thing. It's just the way that I'm using the funds while paying the debt off, if that makes sense. Hi, brothers. Are you assessing international clients with this concept? I am not. I am specifically in the United States. I don't think that these concepts can really be practiced in many countries. In Australia, the velocity banking concept derives from Australia. Let me see if I have the book. Darn it. Here we go. So in Australia, if you look up this book, it says Own Your Home Years Sooner and Retire Debt-Free by Harsh Gill. This is the originator, the godfather, the GOAT. This is the gentleman that came up and developed the concept of velocity banking, or the velocity of money, or whatever marketing term you want to put on it. The idea of moving money in and out of a line of credit to manipulate the interest costs and pay virtually nothing and pay off other debts faster through debt. This is the guy. This is where it comes from. And he did it in Australia and then brought it to the United States. So as far as I know, in Australia, United States, and Canada, these concepts can be applied. But as it relates to the life insurance, I think only the United States and Canada you can do this. Now, if you're in Canada and you need a referral for infinite banking concept, I can give you one, right? You just reach out to me directly and I can give you that referral. But other than that, no, I don't help people outside the country. So adding to previous question, with a second position HELOC, would the strategy be to pay off the first lien as opposed to IBC? So great question, Jay. So let's process that. Let's process that. So let's say that you have, let's say you're a business owner and you also have personal income as well. Let's say your debt tool is a second lien HELOC, okay? Which means that you have to have a personal checking account attached to the second lien. All right, and I'll draw it out like this. This is the classic triangle where you have your personal checking account. You got your bills up here, bills and debts, and you got your line of credit, in your case the HELOC. Here's how it works. Money comes out of the HELOC. That's money out for chunk, right? Let's say you're in debt. Jay, I don't know if you are or not. You can comment. Let's say you're in debt and you want to use velocity banking alone to pay off a debt. So you would pull money out of the line of credit. We determine what that amount would be according to my velocity banking rules when you look at my case studies. And we make a chunk. Not from the line of credit, but from the personal checking account, because with a second lien HELOC, you don't have that function of combining checking and line together as one. Right? So with a second lien, you still need that personal checking. So you're going to manually transfer money out. That's move one. Then you're going to manually make a principal-only payment to the debt. That's move two. So that's your chunk payment. Then because you paid the debt off, right? Debt got paid off. Where did that debt go? That debt's now sitting in the line. Right? So now you owe money on the line. You owe the same amount of money, just now in a different location. Preferably in a lower interest location, if we do the math right. Then income, where does it land? Lands in your checking account. Then you manually transfer your income. So money in, money out. Makes chunk, debt in line. Boom. Then money out for bills. Pay bills, cash flow stays. Cash flow stays. That's velocity banking by itself, Jay, right? Pretty clear? So that's velocity banking by itself. Now, if you wanted to add infinite banking, we need to make sure we have a good framework. So you want to ask yourself, do I have 6 months worth of expenses, emergency fund, and am I saving money? Right? Is it a yes, yes, and yes? Let's assume it is. Let's say you've got 6 months worth of expenses and that equals $20,000. Let's say you have an emergency fund of $5,000, so altogether $25K in savings. And let's say you're saving $10,000 a year. In addition to doing the velocity banking concept, you're saving $10,000 a year. And if you're wondering, Denzel, how do you do velocity banking and save money? You simply count saving as an expense. So my clients do this all the time, where they're still sending their savings to the line of credit, but then they move it out and then they put it in the savings account, high yield. So it's separate away from the velocity method, but it still flowed through velocity, then it flowed out. So let's say you're doing that. So you got $10,000 that you save a year, you got $25,000 in savings. And so then you could say, all right, I'm going to fund a policy at $35,000 lump sum from capital, right? Infinite banking. And we are going to fund 10K after first year, 10K per year. Let's say that was the case. So if we're going to fund 10,000 per year, because that's what you save, and you moved your emergency and your 6 months of expenses into the policy, let's say you're still doing this, right? Then all that's happening is you're continuing your velocity here to accelerate debt, and then you're moving money that you save out of the velocity plan, and then once a year you make a lump sum payment of 10K into your IBC, and that's building another capital tool slowly, but it's building and it's growing at a tax-free guaranteed interest rate. And then let's say you borrow, take a policy loan to maybe pay off a debt, right? So if you're going to pay off a debt through your policy, then you might make your velocity banking plan obsolete, right? Because you might be able to get a lower interest cost by leveraging the policy than your line of credit. Maybe your line of credit interest rate jumped over the last couple of years, so maybe it makes more sense to borrow from the policy instead, right? Maybe that might be the case. So we would just simply evaluate that to see what makes the most sense. Or if it's not pay off debt, but it's invest, then now it's two separate strategies, but it could be operating as one, right? Where you're doing velocity banking on your debt with your second lien HELOC. Money comes out, saves money, that money then gets dumped into the policy. You then borrow against your policy to invest and make more money. And whatever cash flow that investment produces can either get fed into your velocity plan or just get paid right back into the IBC, right? So it's quite similar to what I'm doing, but I'm just doing it with bigger numbers, right? So if you are higher income, then you may want to consider having a first lien, right, over a second. Or again, if you have a super low interest rate mortgage, you might not want to touch that. You just maybe you prefer just not to touch it, and that's your preference. Or maybe you're like, screw it, I only got $100,000 left on this, but I could access a line of credit for $500,000. Let me do that, and then you could use the line of credit to fund the policy. Some people do that. So if that was the case, Jay, let's say the case was you're using velocity banking to help max fund a policy, and then you borrow from the policy to pay off the debt, that could be a thing too, right? So we would just need to have a deeper conversation on that to see what would make the most sense. Hopefully that was helpful. Do the 6 months of expenses and emergency go together? Yeah, typically that's what it is. Sometimes people just have an emergency fund of $5,000, like it's just like there. And then some clients I've spoke to where they have a savings account for $5,000, but then they have another account that they declare are 6 months worth of expenses, right? So you could combine it if you want, or if you want to be more technical, you could say, this is my emergency fund. If something comes up out of the ordinary, outside of my unexpected normal cost of living, then I have this $5,000 emergency fund there for the unexpected. On top of that, you could say, I also have 6 months worth of expenses here, and that money does not get touched in the event of an emergency. It would get pulled from the emergency fund, right? If I lose my job, that's where the 6 months of expenses come in to compensate for the loss in income in the household, right? So again, we're being technical here. I think that once an individual gets to 6 months worth of expenses, total expenses, cost of living, you're going to be in a very healthy financial position. And then on top of that, if you're also continuously saving money for the intent of investing at a later point in time, that's another just personal framework. Like not even TJ could argue that, right? So the only thing TJ is against, right, is the concepts. Specifically, that's what he wrote. Only the concepts are incompatible for TJ. Says you will lose money every time. But my framework will never lose money. Because my framework says save 40% of your income. How could you ever lose when you save that kind of money? How could you ever lose when you save that kind of money every single year consistently? So I save 40% of my income. That, I give credit to Grant Cardone for that. Okay. Love him or hate him. He says some good things. Okay. So I challenge myself. I said, sure, I think I can do that. I think I can save 40% of my income. All right. So I've built my way up to that number. That is a framework. In that, I'll produce way more than 6 months of expenses every single year, right? If I'm saving 40%, right? And then the next part is just simply saying, where does that money get stored, right? And I simply choose to move my savings dollars in whole life insurance over a high yield savings account, over a money market account, over a CD, and over a bond, right? Because those are the only safe, guaranteed locations where I can store money and I'm going to earn a rate of return and I'm not going to lose money. I think where people mess up their personal finances is when you combine savings dollars with investment dollars, or you try to make a comparison from a savings vehicle to an investment vehicle. I think that's where we get confused sometimes, because it's like, if I'm saving 40% of my income, but I take that dollar amount and invest it in the S&P, I'm not saving anymore. I'm investing in the S&P 500, the stock market. Are we clear on that? Does that make sense? Like, I'm no longer saving, I'm investing. I'm now putting my savings dollars at risk for the hope of a higher rate of return than what a normal savings account would get me. So that's an apples to oranges comparison. If I take my savings and I deposit it into a life insurance asset that's not an investment, I'm getting a tax-free guaranteed growth rate, getting a death benefit, and I retain liquidity to my cash. How am I ever losing money on savings? And then I would argue that I'm actually going to have more money than the person that just saved their money in a savings account, high yield, money market, CD, or bond. I'll outperform all of them with just my whole life. I'll outperform those things. Will I outperform a 401k? Absolutely not. Will I outperform the S&P 500? Absolutely not. I don't believe that, right? But that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to save money for the intent of investing at a later point in time once I've built up the capital, okay? So what other questions do you guys have? Was this good? Solid material, Jay? Let me know if that was solid. Action steps, okay? Action steps. I'll write them down. I want to make sure that we're staying on top of our game. It's 2024. We need to be intentional this year, okay? So action steps. For non-client / beginners, you should watch Velocity Banking pregame work playlist. Okay? You should start there, completely free. If you want to do this, Infinite Banking Concept, got a playlist. It's called All About the Infinite Banking Concept. Okay? And there's pregame work in there. Then if you scroll up to the top, okay, and I'll throw it on the screen, and you're ready to talk to an insurance agent and get things going, you can reach out to Steve Parisi and his team over at IBC Global, and they'll be happy to serve you, right? If you are ready to fund a policy and you've done some research and some homework, and now you want to get into actually designing a policy, I would reach out to them. That's where I got my policies designed. I've had a phenomenal experience with them. Okay? Now, in addition to doing that, 2024, if you do not have a financial framework, okay, please comment below. 38, almost 40 people in the house. Comment below if you're in 2024 and you do not have a financial framework in place. Okay? So action step for the non-client beginner: financial framework development. We need to develop a financial framework for you before we introduce a strategy, because strategies can change, but frameworks don't, right? Your framework is your foundation, right? If you change the foundation, you got to start all over again, okay? So I guess the only time you would change your framework if you're literally hitting the reset button. You're like, my current framework does not work. So if you don't have a framework, that's a framework. And you need to hit the reset button on it, blow it up, clear your mind, and now develop an actual financial framework. In order to do that, you can hang out with me in Finance Geek Ministry completely free. There's a link in the description below on this channel and on this video and every video I post, where you can join my ministry completely for free, where I can help you develop this framework completely for free. Right? So that's going to be another action step for the non-client / beginner, developing your financial framework. Then, and only then, we want to implement a strategy that we can put in. Financial framework also is going to be touching on your mindset. Okay? So, action steps, transitioning for clients, longtime followers, supporters, contributors of the channel, right? Your action steps, right? Let's refine. Let's refine, reframe. We might need to refresh. We might need to reset. There's a whole lot of involved. We might need to rekindle the relationship, like Carlos, right? Might have to rekindle our relationship. It's been a little while. Okay, we need to get into the fold again, have a conversation, see how we can serve each other, right? Refine, refresh, reset, reframe, rekindle, reconnect, right? I'll use a less romantic term and just say reconnect, right? That's for clients that are existing longtime followers, supporters, people who I've spoken to in the past. It's been 2 years, it's been 3 years. It's time to jump on a call, right? Let's connect. I want to see how you're doing, right? And let's build, let's build, let's build, let's build. Okay? Next thing for the clients, right? If it's been a while, book a call. I got some cool things I want to discuss. Okay? Cool things. We need to have our strategy session. We need to have our whiteboard session, more than likely. Let's take it to the whiteboard and map this stuff out. All right? Those are the action steps. Let's see. Carlos says, is it wise to invest in a thrift savings plan provided through my job at the max matching rate they give me and then add a whole life insurance policy? Totally up to you. Again, you're combining investing dollars and savings dollars and comparing the two. So you're comparing a thrift savings plan, which is an investment strategy, with a non-investment strategy, whole life insurance. So I would want to work on your mindset and how you view your money at the end of the day. And I think it would be important to figure out how can we have both, right? How could we invest in the thrift savings plan with investing dollars, getting the matching rate or whatever, and then say, here's how much money I want to save per year for the sake of saving, with the future intent of investing those dollars at a later point in time. We come up with what that dollar amount is. That's what we save. This is what we invest, right? Now, there's people in the room or people that may catch the recording that you don't believe in separating the two. That's totally fine. That's your prerogative, right? If you combine the two and you just call it investing, the last thing you want to do is put your investing dollars in a non-investment, which is whole life insurance. Why would you put investment dollars in a non-performing asset, a non-investment asset? Why would you do that? And think that you're going to get investment performance from that product? Not a good idea, in my opinion. Not a good idea. Okay? I know Velocity Banking pretty decent, but just heard of IBC, don't know much about it. Great. Action step, all about the Infinite Banking Concept playlist. Check that out. Develop it, dive into it. You can check out other content creators, get different perspectives, and then piece together a action step that you're going to move forward with. Cool. I've got Velocity Banking down and half paid off debt, have a half of a framework foundation. Great. That's good. That's good. So maybe we only need to tweak, refine, right? Jay says, thanks for the info, fellow Queens, New York brother. Nice. My hurdle is, do I use my cash flow to pay down HELOC, which I would use to pay down mortgage first, or use HELOC to fund IBC, then pay down mortgage? That's a tough one, right? Because for sure, using a HELOC to pay off your mortgage, Velocity Banking will go faster, right? Because you don't have the insurance expense of adding that asset, the whole life insurance, right? So I'll bring your comment back up. You don't have the insurance expense and cost, capitalization period of growing that money in the policy, right? So you're going to go faster using a HELOC to pay off your mortgage. But is that what you want to do? Is that efficient for you? We have to figure that out, right? Because you might say, instead of paying my mortgage off now, I would rather retain my liquidity and cash flow by leveraging my cash flow and debt to max fund a policy, have that grow a couple of years, then take out a loan at the right point in time when there's enough capital built up in there and pay off the home in one shot, right? So you pay off the home in one shot, then you turn your second lien into a first lien, you grow the capital line, you immediately reaccess those funds, and now you have money owed in the policy, which you could use your first lien to help pay back the policy loan if there's an interest difference in doing that. Chances are that may not make sense. It might just make sense to, say, leverage the first lien if you don't have existing capital to max fund the policy and cover the loan interest, right? So maybe we might do a bit of both. So we would figure that out. So, right, it's cool. You have different options of how we can go about this. So if you've never worked with me before, I would consider that, or someone in this arena that you could bounce these ideas off of and run the numbers and invest that time. But if you want to do it on your own, trust me that I'm all you. If you want to do it on your own, I've got plenty of people that watch this channel that I've never spoken to for years, but they've been following me for years, and they just follow the case studies. They go back, they look at the different case studies that match their numbers, and they're able to do it really, really well. So Terry says, book my call. Woohoo! Happy New Year to you, Terry. It's been a while, so I'm excited to get on a phone call with you. I am not seeing any other questions. This was phenomenal, just diving into this and building our frameworks and strategies. It's the top of the year, 2024. So I am excited. I'm excited. You got your action steps and you put it back on the board again, right? Non-client beginner, watch more videos, preferably. Study more. You're in the accumulation period of studying, right? Give yourself time to study and learn. Simultaneously, let's develop your financial framework. You can join Finance Geek Ministry for free, where you can interact with me live just like this, but be on camera in a Zoom meeting with less people, and you'd have more time to really discuss these questions, and we can kind of have a dialogue, conversation back and forth. So that might be fun for you. And then the existing clients, this might be the season of refining, refreshing, maybe reset, reconnect, book a call. Let's have a strategy session. Let's do a whiteboard. Let's get some work laid out. Let's figure out what our word of the year is. I declare to you that my word of the year is consistency. So this is the year of consistency for me. Last year was the year of credibility. Okay? So this year is the year of consistency. You might want to consider coming up with a theme for 2024 for your financial life, maybe your health life, maybe your faith life, right? All three, or you can name different ones. But typically, since you're here with me right now, we're focusing a whole lot on the money piece. Let's develop a theme, a word of the year that correlates to the financial goals that you have. This way it's summarized. And then when we get on a call, that's how we're working on our framework, on our processing system, how we move forward. So that's it, folks. We're done. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to spending more time with you. I'm having a lifetime income workshop next week, Tuesday, right, at 8 p.m. Eastern time, I believe, via Zoom. So the way to get invited, you got to be on my email list or join Finance Geek Ministry, right? Links in the description below. It's the first link under every video. Be a part of that. And we're going to talk about how we develop and create guaranteed lifetime income streams, or lifetime income streams, and say not guaranteed, but close to guaranteed, consistent passive income through different vehicles. We're going to look at case studies, have a dialogue, have some fun, really map out our year. And then the last Friday of the month is coming up, and that's where we do our Finance Geek Ministry meetings. We meet twice a month, the last Friday and the first Friday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern time via Zoom. So you would join Finance Geek Ministry to get all that information. You get a course, interaction, ability to get coaching from me for free. And we make it happen. We go from, negative cash flow, low cash flow, zero cash flow to positive thousands of dollars in cash flow and living the life we desire with integrity, with honor, peace, joy, and happiness, fulfilling the kingdom, expanding the kingdom, right? And being a good financial steward. All right. So we're going to close it out here. Thank you very much. God bless. And we will be talking very, very soon.